We're on.
Awesome.
Hello, and thank you for joining the webinar today. I wanted to just ask you all, if as you begin to come on and log in, to go ahead and in the chat box, if you would, type in your location, where you're from. So I know we have a lot of people coming on today from multiple parts of the country, and if you would, I would appreciate it. Deborah Hanratty from Arizona, thank you very much. That's good to hear. We are already spanning the globe. And then after that, Deborah and anyone else that joins, would you please put in the chat box what your role is? HR manager. No, that's good to know. Thank you. And as others come on to the call, to the webinar, please indicate your location and your role. That'll give us a chance to get to know everyone that's on the call. Thank you all for joining. As we continue to have people come on to the webinar, we wanted to have you all type in the chat box your location. If you would please, type in your location, and then after that, if you would also type in your role, that would be great. That'll give us a chance to know who all and what all we have on the phone. Thank you. It's good to see my neighbors on the call. Denise, she's from Columbus. And we have Bob from Bedford. Thanks, Bob. We'll give it another couple minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. But as other people have joined on since I last spoke, if you would please put in the chat box your location, and then also put in what your role is in your company. Hi, Wes. Well, a few housekeeping items as we get ready to get started here. All attendees are going to be in listen-only mode. And as more people come on, I want to also reassure you to type your location in the chat box, and then also what your role is. Well, thank you all for joining. I wanted to go ahead and get us started here. So again, everybody is going to be in listen-only mode. So if you have questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A box. If, again, you have different things that you want to tell us about yourself, much like I asked with what your role is and your location, please put them in the chat box. So again, I talked a lot about this being a webinar, and really I want to change this up and make it more of a workshop. So this is going to be more interactive, even though we're on a webinar call, if you will, on Zoom, but we still want to have as much interaction as possible. So any questions you have, again, put them in the Q&A box. During the workshop, if you'd like to ask those questions, again, in the Q&A box, and if there are different parts of the presentation where you have questions, again, Q&A box, but if there's a portion of the presentation where you get knocked off, please use the same link, come back on. And I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about the different parts of the presentation where we're going to be polling you. So be sharp, be aware that we are going to, at various different times, I think we have 3 or 4 different polls that we will ask you different things about the presentation today. And at this point, we are just about ready to go. And now as everyone begins to think about what it is that, that they're here for, I want you all to understand that this is going to be our first poll. So the first poll is what describes your onboarding process. And I'm going to go ahead and launch it. I'm going to leave it up here for a minute or so, and then we will get started. If anyone would answer their, oh, we have some answers coming in now. Well, that's good. Nails on the chalkboard. Had no idea that they would get some some results. That's good. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate you answering. I'm going to leave it open for another 10 seconds. So if you would, finish up when you get a chance. Okay. Well, thank you all for responding. I'm going to end the poll. And here are our results. So we did have 20% of you said that it was on nails on the chalkboard annoying, but mostly the results came in as 40% being that we can do better. And I'm sure everybody is in that same boat where you always know that you can do better regardless of where you are. And then the other 40% was a happy accident, and they're just looking for more information, which is also, and more structure, which is also good. So having said all that, let's see, I need to tell you a little bit about today's session. Hopefully today's session will answer some of those questions, if they're questions, or help you to resolve some of those issues if you still have issues. And that's really important because we're going to be hearing from Erin Lydy. Erin is an organizational effectiveness coach, and she's also a leadership coach. She's out of Norwalk, Ohio, and her passion is developing highly engaged leaders who inspire and lead their team to be more productive and engaged. Please join me in welcoming Erin Lydy. Thank you, Erin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Brian, and welcome everyone. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share a few things with you regarding onboarding. My business is Risen Path Consulting. I spent 20 years in the HR world doing leadership and team development, and then I started my own business about 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm really passionate about helping leaders improve employee engagement and employee productivity. So like you, I've had to adjust my business a little bit. And typically I am in a corporate office and I'm in a classroom. I'm doing facilitation on various topics. And we've now had to adjust. And here we are doing workshops online and using Zoom. And it's been fun. And I'm sure you've had to adjust some of your practices as well. One of them might be hiring new employees and onboarding them. So we're going to talk a little bit about some simple ways you can make that a really good experience when you're not able to greet them in the lobby or see them in person. So just a few things maybe to help you along the way and give you some new ideas. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see some of the highlights here that we're talking about. Again, Risen Path Consulting is my business. Feel free to check out my website. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. So what we're going to do is fairly simple. Discover maybe some new ways, new ideas to onboard new employees when they're working remotely or in a different location, even if they're just working down the street and working from home. There's certain things we can do to improve the experience. And then identify the potential blind spots along the way. So we know Brian is an expert in blind spots, and there's blind spots in just about any topic. And we have identified some that could be through onboarding as well that you might experience. So quick reminder, we definitely want to hear from you. We want this to be interactive and engaging. So any ideas you have or comments you want to make, be sure to put those in the chat box. And there's a drop-down box to make sure that all attendees see it as well. You can either do all panelists or panelists and attendees. So go ahead and do panelists and attendees so everybody can see what is being said. And then of course, anything specific topic related, put that in the Q&A. We will be visiting questions at the end, so it'll be easier for us to visit the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring. Brian will help us monitor the chat box as we go along. All right, so I'm excited to see the different states we have here. I know we have Ohio and Arizona. Did we have any other states represented here? Did we see any others pop in, Brian?
No, I didn't see any other ones pop in.
Okay, great. Well, as they pop in, let me know what other states we have represented here. We're going to go ahead and kick off one of my poll questions. And that question is, how long does it take for a new employee to determine if they made the right decision by accepting your offer? So how long is it going to take them to decide if they made the right decision? Do you think it's 2 hours, 2 days, 4 days, or 2 weeks? And we've got the poll box that's going to pop up. Go ahead and answer what you think it is.
We got some answers coming in now. We've got maybe 1 or 2 more to come in. I think that might be it.
Okay.
And we'll end the poll. And these are the results. So
good guesses. Okay. So we have a tie of 2 hours, 2 days, and 4 weeks. So those of you who picked 2 hours is correct. So what happens is they have a good experience or a bad experience within the first 2 hours. I have a personal example of a couple experiences. The first one was I was showing up at a new job, and my boss was in a different location, a different state actually, and she assured me everything was going to be ready and there would be somebody there to greet me. And that just wasn't the case. I showed up and there was nobody there, and many people didn't even know I was coming, and it was somewhat awkward and uncomfortable, and I didn't have a laptop, computer, login. I didn't have any of that set up. They certainly scrambled to get it set up and to kind of make it a better welcome, but by that point it was a uncomfortable and bad experience. And that was probably just like within the first 2 minutes. But most people make a decision in the first 2 hours. Another company that I joined, they met me in the lobby. So the office was on the 32nd floor. They met me in the lobby, showed me what elevators to use, kind of showed me where to get the coffee or the little cafe in the area. Just made sure I had a nice welcoming at my desk, had a little bouquet of flowers, a little note card. And, that was just like, oh, this is awesome. And hopefully this is what the culture's like every day. And it was a very nice and very warm welcoming, again, in just the first couple minutes. So people are going to make that decision, or, question if they made the right decision or have confidence in the decision they made in those first 2 hours. Brian, I think you have an experience as well.
yeah, I mean, one of my first companies that I worked for, when I got there, I wasn't quite sure who I'd be working for. When I found the person that I was working for, I knew within the first 2 hours easily that I had made the wrong decision. He had me shadow someone, which is the least favorable term I think we can think of to do, is I was someone's shadow for a day. And then, but before that, I actually sat in a room with him, and, we had this meeting with the other people on the team, his team, and several times during the meeting, he would answer his phone. And everyone else there in the meeting they would just wait until, he was being on the phone. So that to me was very off-putting. And there were other instances like that where I just knew that it was the wrong thing, wrong place for me.
Yeah. So it's so important to realize what experience we're giving. Are we distracted? Are we on our cell phone? Or do we just have a shadow for the day? How are we welcoming them? So really having that awareness as to what perception we might be sending to our new employee. All right. Here's our next poll. What percent of employees strongly agree that their organization does a great job with onboarding? 5%, 12%, 45%, or 82%. So we'll see our poll box pop up.
We've got a few of you voting. I think we're all done voting. I'll end the poll. And there we are.
Okay, so either 5% or 12%. Good.
Yep.
So you're right. One of those is the right answer, and it is 12%. So 12% employees strongly agree that the organization does a great job with onboarding. Clearly, there's room for improvement. And again, it's about the experience that we deliver. All right, so even before talking about onboarding, I just want to talk about recruiting. So even before the first day, what was their experience like during the hiring process? So do you know what their experience is with the recruiters they're working with, some of the HR team members, the hiring manager? What is that experience like? Oftentimes recruiters, I'm come from being a recruiter. I started as a recruiter and then I moved into the HR manager world. So oftentimes recruiters are just so excited. Recruiters are like your best engaged employees oftentimes because they're constantly hiring new energy and new people and extending offers and getting the excitement. So sometimes you can over promise and under deliver. So it's important to make sure you understand the experience people have during the recruiting process and ensuring that the culture isn't overly exaggerated, or what the type of job they might be doing isn't overly exaggerated. So understanding the experience that they've had up until their first day and making sure that they match. The potential blind spot could be the overpromise and underdeliver aspect, where they get so excited about what they heard during the hiring process, but then maybe it isn't 100% real when they get there. So making sure that what's being said is really what ends up being delivered on day one and throughout their employment. So carrying that same experience from hiring to onboarding and then through engagement and retention. And that's just a piece of culture that just speaks to your company's culture and your values, and living those values and just making sure that they're in all aspects. Identify any potential gaps that there could be between those processes from hiring to onboarding and starting the first day and all that. Now we know there are different types of onboarding experiences. Certainly have your in-person, whether it's one-on-one with someone or in a group setting. If you show up in a classroom and that's your day one, that's your onboarding, you get some training, you do your paperwork, or maybe you just sit down with someone and do your paperwork, and then that's it. So there's all different types. There's the virtual type. You can hop on Zoom and do the virtual type. You do online modules where they're self-guided. And sometimes this just doesn't exist. Sometimes you just have a pile of papers or a bunch of things to log in and fill out. So there's certainly different types of onboarding. Excuse me, but the key is to make it a really good experience, no matter what type of onboarding you do. The experience with the person they're meeting with, the experience with the person in the classroom during the facilitation and the introduction to the company and all that. This isn't just a one and done. It's going to carry on. So the experience they have on their first day is really going to sit with them, and then the excitement for their new job and doing really good work and all that is going to lead into future engagement and retention. All right, so we're going to talk a little about what happens in-house, in person. So we have a structured orientation. Sometimes we do meet and greets. We want to make sure they meet the right people. Everything's ready. The desk and the supplies are all ready and waiting there for them at their workstation. You have all your logins and access to all the systems ready to go. Probably have some gifts or some swag, some company swag to welcome them. Probably take them out for lunch with the team. and certainly give them a tour of the facility. So that's typically what happens. I'm sure there's other things that happen, but that's fairly standard. So how can you take that type of onboarding and make it remotely? And so how can you replicate that in-house onboarding experience? You know, they still need a computer. So are you mailing them a computer? Do they have all their login information and access to the different things they need? The tours, are you giving them a tour of the internal website, you know, how to find things and where to go, and all that, and access to all the appropriate shared folders. So taking the tour aspect a little bit differently from a remote perspective. So being able to replicate as best you can that experience. You certainly want to stay with your meet and greets. Schedule these over Zoom or the Google Hangouts, whatever your tool you're using. But it's important to have that a little bit of that face-to-face time for your meet and greets, so they can learn about the culture and the people they'll be working with and some of the leaders in the organization. And then what's really fun is just the laid back casual happy hours. You know, jump on a Zoom call at 4 o'clock on a Friday, grab your favorite drink and just chat with your teammates. You know, keep it casual, you know, don't talk about business, talk about what you're gonna do for the weekend, you know, just kind of chit chat and get to know each other non-business. So it's important to have that connection as well. And then do those check-ins. If you have regularly scheduled one-on-ones, you want to make sure you maintain those. You know, these can be video, but we all know that Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So you can do phone check-in where you don't have to feel like you're so on camera. So just make sure you have those regularly scheduled check-ins, see how they're doing, how's their first day, how's their first week, what do they need, what are they missing? So it's important to continue to check in with them. All right, Brian, do we have any comments in the chat box that you want to highlight?
Nope, we have no comments in the chat box or Q&A. We're getting to the good stuff though, people. Pay attention.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so we're going to jump into just 3 simple and highly impactful ways you can improve your onboarding experience from Afar. Now, this isn't rocket science. It's probably things you're already doing, and I'm sure you have ideas as well. So would love to hear some of the things you're doing and what your ideas are, in addition to what you'll see here today. So the first one, to try to set yourself apart from the others, the first idea is the welcome package. The welcome package for your new employee and their family. So a lot of times new employees get, you know, a nice welcome package, whether it's sitting on their desk or maybe we're mailing it to them now. But let's welcome the family too. If your values speak to, you know, your work-life balance and family values, then show that by sending a gift to the family. So again, it could be swag for your employees. They have some fun marketing stuff from you, a nice gift basket for the family, and then don't forget about kids, right? If your new employee has kids, you want to welcome them too. Now at this point you might be saying, but I'm not supposed to know if they're married or have kids. And you're right, and that's during the interview process. So by now they've accepted the job offer, they have their start date, so you can do a welcome call. Congratulations, so excited to have you on board, can't wait for your first day. I want to get to know you, so tell me a little bit more about your family. What do you guys like to do? What do you do on the weekends? You know, do you like to go out to dinner? Do you like to cook? So just kind of get to know them and then cater a gift basket. It doesn't have to be fancy, like the kids, you know, just maybe a puzzle or candy or coloring books or, you know, whatever the case may be when it comes to being genuine and authentic in what you think the family would like. So that's the first idea. Brian, what blind spots could we see with this one?
There are a lot of blind spots that I can see with this. I mean, just making broad assumptions could put you in a pickle, if you will. So, for example, if they say they hate Starbucks and you give them a Starbucks gift card, well, what's the point of that? If you're talking to them and they tell you about their kids and their kids, they don't go out to eat very much because their kids have peanut allergies, and then you send them a gift basket with peanut M&Ms or something like that, and that's not very smart. So you want to make sure you're thinking through all those things and having the conversations up front, because you don't want to make assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. So the assumption piece is definitely a clear blind spot, making an assumption that everybody likes something. And I love that Brian said Starbucks, because very often you hear everybody likes Starbucks. And that's just not the case, because I'll share with you right now, you're looking at somebody who doesn't like Starbucks. And I can't tell you how many gift cards I've received for Starbucks, and I just give them away. I give them to my stepdaughter and she's thrilled. So it's a good thing in that regard. But no, I don't like Starbucks. And so it's important to make sure you understand their likes and desires, and you can cater to that.
David said he worked at Starbucks while in college. So not everyone likes coffee.
Exactly, right. And I know Starbucks offers other things, but I personally just don't like their Starbucks flavor of their coffee. Okay, so let's move on to idea number 2. And now this is something that's been around for a while, but what can we do differently? How can we beef it up? And that is the mentor and buddy program. And I recommend doing this at all levels, executive level, a manager level, individual contributor level. It's so important that somebody has somebody to go to with what they might think is a dumb question or a silly question. They just need that person that they can have comfort and rely on. Often called an accountability buddy or accountability partner as well. So, just make sure that when you have the mentor or the buddy or the accountability partner, that they know what the expectations are, they know what their role is. Sometimes there's like a little mini job description, role description that will explain what it means to be a mentor to a new employee. And again, at all levels. So everybody's nervous to start a new role, no matter what level you are. There's some anxiety, and you're walking into a new building, you're accessing, brand new site, so it's having somebody there to kind of help you navigate and make that a comfortable transition and all that. So make sure it's also someone who's also somewhat new, maybe 6 months to a year new. They can still remember what it felt like to be new, and they can reflect on that and share their experience and say, oh yeah, I remember here, this is the stumbling block I discovered. I want to make sure you don't have that. So here's what I did. And then just help them just navigate the culture and who's who. Now, this can also be damaging. So you just want to make sure you have the right person selected. If you have somebody who's kind of your Debbie Downer or misery loves company, that could really impact your new employee's experience. So you just want to make sure somebody who's engaged in the company, just really loves to mentor and help others along. So that's my recommendation for mentor and buddy, and just have those regular check-ins. If you can do face-to-face video, that's great. You can see some of the facial expressions, when somebody says, how's it going so far? And, the response is, oh, great. And you get an eye roll. Well, you're not going to see that if you're over the phone. So it's helpful to have some of the time be on video and some of the time be on the phone. So you can really read those nonverbal cues and all that. Any blind spots that we can think of for this one, Brian?
Yeah, before I go into that, I wanted to let you know, Erin, that there's been a question asked by Deborah. What suggestions, and I'm going to ask you this question, and then while you think about it, I'll go into the blind spots that I see for this, and give you a little time to think. So what suggestions do you have for a startup company that does not have swag or a budget for gifts? So while you're thinking about that, the blind spots in this second session is with having the incorrect expectations. So, and that could be the incorrect expectation from the employer standpoint, as well as from the mentor standpoint. So, you need to make sure that you're doing everything you can to pick the right mentor, make sure that the mentor knows that he is the mentor, and just understanding that anything he says is going to be a direct reflection on your company. So that expectation means everything. And so that mentor really needs to be designated, and you have to be very intentional. Now
Awesome.
back to that question, Erin.
Yep. I'm gonna get back to that in a second. I'm gonna finish up our mentor segment here.
Okay.
Um, so I mentioned earlier that it can be damaging, so make sure you select the right person, and Brian alluded to that also. Um, I I had a really good experience in one of my most recent companies where I was selected to be a mentor to someone, a new HR manager at a different location, and you know we just hit it off really quickly. We identified a lot of things in common, and you know she even said, you made my experience so much better. So just remembering the impact that a good mentor, a good buddy could have. And to this day, neither one of us are at that company anymore, but we are still really good friends. We still reach out and see each other and chat and all that. So you never know what it could lead to, but again, I just recommend that you are selective when it comes to the mentor buddy. So for the question, when you have a new startup, you don't have swag, you don't have budget, you know, you're putting all your money into the technology or the build up, the startup and all that. One of my favorite things is old school notes, note cards. You know, just have everybody write a note. Everybody in the company, on the team, write a personal handwritten note, or everybody sign a note. I don't know anybody who doesn't enjoy a handwritten note in the mail. So even during the quarantine time, you know, people are stuck at home. I made it a point to send cards to people because I knew I enjoyed that. So I was hoping others would enjoy that too, and they did. They're like, I'm so glad I got your card. So we just don't see that much, but I think that would be a really good way to welcome someone, is to have a nice handwritten note. You don't have to spend money. You don't have to have swag. Eventually you probably will. And then you can gift swag to everybody. And I know a lot of people just are low on budgets. But a lot of times just that note and personalization to the family and all that. You know, if you can do if you don't have a huge team, and maybe you can do like a little picnic or a potluck, you know, get everybody together, meet the families, you know, have everybody contribute a side dish, and that's kind of a good way to welcome people as well.
That's a great idea, Erin, and even Denise here, she agrees with you, and so do I. But I just want to let you know, I never got a card.
You're right, you didn't. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'll make
I'll
sure you
fix
do
that.
that. Okay. So.
Thanks for calling me out.
Yeah, right. So Deborah says, glad to hear that. She said that I've done that in the past, and then also made a point to highlight out the new hires during their all hands and spotlight their some fun facts. So that's nice.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Definitely, yeah, introduce them to everybody. Yes, I agree. All right, moving on to idea number 3. And this is recognition and appreciation. And there is a difference. So we're going to talk a little bit about the difference, but it's so important that people are not only recognized, but they're also appreciated for the work they're doing. And, you know, you have a new employee starting, and sometimes it's not, you don't know what to recognize, because typically recognition is based on results and productivity and all that. So it's important to at least have some recognition, have some appreciation on a regular basis. Employees tend to stick around when they feel valued, when they feel appreciated. Recognition is more about awards, and appreciation is more about genuine, authentic appreciation and a nice thank you. So I'm going to highlight a few of the differences. Recognition is typically fairly structured. It's behavior focused. You're focusing on what they did that you wanted them to do. So whether it's, you know, increasing sales or decreasing costs, you know, they did something that is beneficial to the company. It's typically, you know, company focused. There's like rules behind it. Comes from the top down, very structured. And again, it's more specific to rewards and them doing something results oriented. Appreciation is more of the value focused performance plus their value as an individual. So you don't have to appreciate results, but you can appreciate somebody's style or dependability or timeliness, that type of thing. It's more individual focused. It comes from all directions. People love to be appreciated from their leaders, managers, as well as their peers and coworkers. It's very specific and very individualized. So that's a little bit about the difference between recognition and appreciation. So when it comes to a new employee, it's really appreciating what they bring to the table. Maybe you haven't seen the results yet, but you appreciate what they're doing. You know, I really appreciate your drive on this project, or I really appreciate what you're doing to get to know everybody and focusing on your meet and greets. So just those little things, that is more like the value as an individual, their style that they bring, the characteristics that they bring, that type of thing. So that's a little bit about the difference. And then this is a little sneak peek. Let's talk about blind spots first. Any blind spots, Brian, around recognition and appreciation?
Yeah, before we sneak peek, blind spots here. I mean, what's the difference between the two? I mean, that's the big blind spot. So, of course, I didn't know what it was before we started planning this call. So, Erin has helped me a lot with understanding what the difference is between recognition and appreciation. So, you know, I'm sure that's a problem for lots of managers, that, you know, they think thank you is good enough, and obviously it's not always the right thing for the right people.
Yes, that is so true. Just because somebody receives a reward for doing a good job, it doesn't directly mean that they feel appreciated. And there's a difference between feeling appreciated and valued, and in a genuine and authentic way. So there's danger in making the assumption that saying thank you applies to everyone. Right. So speaking of this, we have our next workshop scheduled specific to recognition and appreciation. We're going to dive deeper into the difference and what it means. And there's actually appreciation languages out there. So if you're familiar with the book, The 5 Love Languages, the same author partnered with an industrial organizational psychologist and discovered that those languages are also in the workplace when it comes to appreciation. So we mentioned thank you, that's words of affirmation. And a lot of times leaders assume, well, I say thank you all the time, but they still don't think I appreciate them. Well, that's because you're only hitting 48% of the population, because everyone else has a different appreciation language. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So save the date for sure for Wednesday, July 29th at 2:00. So we can learn a little bit more about the difference between those two and talk about the appreciation languages. All right, did we have any more questions come in?
I have not. Well, there were some more questions that came in. There was. So David says, you were presented on behalf of the hiring manager and teams. I want to flip the table for job seekers and candidates and new employees. One big blind spot is the lack of response during the interviewing and hiring and onboarding process for the candidates and new employees. Here's the question. Actually, there's two questions. How should candidates and new employees react to hiring employers not responding in a timely manner, and who should they ask for guidance? Yeah,
so unfortunately, that has just been an issue for years. It was an issue when I started out as a recruiter 20 some years ago, and it's an issue still today. Why people don't follow up, I don't understand. If you are a candidate and you are applying for jobs and you're not hearing from people, let's assume you've already had interviews. So it would make sense. They would owe you a response. A lot of times I suggest that people, as the candidate, ask the question, what is an appropriate time for me to follow up with you? My experience has been people don't follow up. And I would really like to know, what is the best way for me to follow up with you? I'm really interested in feedback. If I don't get the job, I understand. I'm really interested in feedback. So what is the best way for me to follow up with you so I can stay in touch and understand what my status is? Hopefully, sometimes companies will send in the auto-generated responses, thank you, but no thank you. At least there's closure there. But if it just becomes crickets and there's nothing, I would ask during the interview process, what is the right thing to do? What is appropriate? It's very, of my interest that I hear back from you. So what is the best way for me to do that? Or what is your process? If I don't hear from you in 2 weeks, does that mean I didn't get the job and I should just move on? Can I follow up with you in 2 weeks? Who's the most appropriate person for me to do that? I would love some feedback regarding, why I didn't get the position. So those are my suggestions. I hope that's helpful. Is to just ask up front, if you have permission to follow up and when. So it's kind of like you're agreeing to the next step. Instead of just waiting and crossing your fingers, you can ask for that next step, even on your end as the candidate. Ask for that next step. Can I follow up with you if I don't hear from you in 2 weeks?
Hey, Erin, why don't we tee this up to the other people that are on the call? I mean, is there anyone else that has some differing ideas?
Yeah, I would love to hear from others for sure.
So we'll see what comes in. In the meantime, as people are typing, hopefully vigorously with their answers, because I'm sure they have lots of ideas that they want to share. While we're doing that, do you want to go to the next slide and talk about what you were saying? Well, yeah, go ahead.
So my next slide is our feedback. So staying in touch with us. You can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Erin, Lydy, and my website's there. And Brian and his website, so be sure to connect with Brian as well. But then we have a feedback form that we would love for you to complete. And I think at some point Brian's going to pop that up. Yep. If we don't have any questions, we can go ahead and do that, or we can see if there's anything going on in chat or Q&A.
So the one thing I didn't mention with this survey that I'm going to pull up here in a minute, anybody that enters into and completes this survey, they're going to be entered in a raffle, and the raffle will be for a $25 gift card. So please fill out the survey. But there's one other thing that we wanted to talk about, and that is the question about if there is one idea that you learned from today, from this call, what would it be? Something that you could implement. Were you going to already mention that, Erin? Am I taking your thunder?
No, I'm glad you did that. Yes, we'd love to hear if anything resonated with you. If you took one little nugget away, what is it? What are you going to either do differently? What are you going to try? What are you going to implement? Maybe take back to the team as a suggestion. So we'd love to hear if there's any nuggets that you're going to take away with you.
Okay. And please enter those into the chat box. But now we're ready to launch the survey. So I'll give you a minute or so to fill that out. I think there's 5 questions there. Yep. Okay, so Wes says he loved the topic and can only imagine that this is where we're headed. He likes the platforms with this, and Slack will be the new normal. So the instant messaging, Slack, that's right. And then Denise says she likes the online self-guided modules idea. That would be great for both new hires and existing employees as refreshers. And then David says, I think both of you should speak at the local SHRM meeting. Okay. We've not been invited to that one yet. Are you a member of the SHRM there, David? You can just get us set up, maybe. That'd be great. Let's see. Who all has completed? I think yeah, David says we can talk. That's good. So it's been a minute and a half. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I will. What I'll do is I will take this information back, and I will do the raffle. We'll do the raffle, Erin and I, and then we'll select the winner. And I will notify you via email. I have your email addresses from your registration, so we can go from there. Erin, do you have anything else?
I don't. We're ending shy of 3 o'clock, so we're gifting back 15 minutes of your day. But if there's anything you want to add in the chat box or the Q&A, we'd love to continue to have the conversation. I hope you took something away, and I'm really glad you were here, and appreciate your time. And I hope you have a great weekend.
Great. Thank you very much, Erin. And thank you, Denise and Deborah. Appreciate you being on and giving us your time today. Take care.